black sky.
Greetings, my name is Dmytro Antoniuk. I am from Kiev, Ukraine, and I am part of Black Sky team. And today, this is, as usual, this is our weekly digest of our materials that we posted this past week. We will start with the piece written by Andrius Hayovy, which is called "Poland is refusing to grant international protection to Belarusians on the grounds that the human rights situation in Belarus has improved." Has it really improved? So this article examines Poland's recent decisions to deny international protection to some Belarusian citizens based on the claim that the human rights situation in Belarus has improved. Andrius questions this assessment, arguing that the apparent decline in political repression reflects a lack of available information rather than real change. Based on comments from Belarusian human rights defenders, the article explains that the Belarusian authorities have made repression less visible by limiting access to court information and intimidating those who report politically motivated arrests. As a result, many cases go undocumented, even though new political prisoners continue to be detained. Andrius argues that the available evidence does not support the view that Belarus has become safer for government critics. Instead, this article suggests that repression remains widespread and warns that decisions on asylum should take into account the full picture presented by independent human rights organizations. So the next one is by Olga Semashko. It is called "No Passport, Money or Property. MPs back restrictions on Russians who have left the country." This material gives a picture about new legislation approved by the Russian State Duma that would restrict the rights of Russian citizens living abroad. The proposed measures would deny many consular services, limit access to bank accounts and property in Russia, and affect people accused of criticizing the military, supporting sanctions, or being linked to foreign agents or undesirable organizations. Olga explains that Russian officials present the law as a way to deal with people who cannot be extradited from other countries. However, legal experts argue that the measures effectively strip political migrants of many basic rights while allowing the Russian state to maintain control over them. And this article concludes that the legislation is intended not only to punish Russians who have already left the country, but also to discourage others from criticizing the government or Russian dictatorship, namely. Human rights organizations have called on host countries to develop practical ways to protect Russian political migrants from these new restrictions and actually persecutions. The next article is written by Yulia Derdyuk. The Road Home. What Ukrainians need to return from territories controlled by Russia. This article examines the roots and challenges faced by Ukrainians returning from territories occupied by Russia. With the front line closed since 2022, most people must travel through Russia, must go, not travel, of course, go through Russia and then enter Ukraine via Belarus or third countries such as Georgia, Armenia, or Turkey. The humanitarian corridor at the Morkani-Domanovo border crossing remains the most common route. Yulia explains that many returnees face serious obstacles, including pressure to obtain Russian documents, lengthy identity checks, and difficulties replacing lost or expired Ukrainian documents. Young people who grew up under occupation often experience the most complicated verification process because they lack official Ukrainian photo identification. And this article highlights the important role of humanitarian organizations in helping people return safely back home. It argues that despite the many legal and practical difficulties, support from volunteers and Ukrainian institutions is essential in helping citizens make their journey back home. The next one is done by Svetlana Myalik. And this is an interview which is called "Elections During Wartime Are Impossible. Post-war elections won't be perfect, but they must be legitimate," says Andriy Mahera. So this is an interview with former deputy chairman of Ukraine's Central Election Commission, Andriy Mahera, who explains why presidential and parliamentary elections cannot legally take place under martial law. He argues that elections are not simply a procedural exercise, but must guarantee fundamental democratic principles, including free expression, equal participation, and voter security, conditions that cannot be met while the country remains at war. Mahera also addresses questions surrounding the legitimacy of Ukraine's current leadership, emphasizing that President Volodymyr Zelensky continues to exercise his constitutional powers until a newly elected president takes office. This interview also examines the extensive preparations required for Ukraine's first post-war vote. Among the most difficult challenges are ensuring voting rights for military personnel, internally displaced persons, and millions of Ukrainians living abroad, while developing legislation that enjoys broad political and public support. Mahera stresses that although the first post-war elections may not be perfect, they must be widely recognized as legitimate. Drawing on international experience from countries such as Bosnia, Croatia, Moldova, and Romania, Mahera argues that Ukraine should adapt proven practices to its own wartime realities. And to conclude our weekly digest, the last material, the last piece, is again done by Olga Semashka. It's called "Wild Berries: How a Family Business Became a Strategic Asset for Russia." This piece gives a picture about the transformation of Russia's largest online marketplace called Wild Berries, from a family-run business into a company with strategic economic and political importance. It traces Wild Berries' rapid growth under founders Tatiana and Vladislav Bakalchuk, highlighting how its vast logistics network now handles a significant share of Russia's retail trade and has become a key platform for parallel imports. The investigation explores the dramatic 2024 corporate conflict that drew in billionaire Suleiman Kerimov, Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, and ultimately Vladimir Putin. What began as a business dispute escalated into a violent power struggle, leading to the Bakalchuk's divorce, a deadly shootout at the company's Moscow office, and Putin's reported intervention to settle this conflict. This piece argues that Wildberries has evolved beyond a private company into an asset closely tied to Russia's political and business elites. Olha also examines Wildberries' growing role in Russia's wartime economy. The platform has facilitated the sale of dual-use goods, drone components, and military equipment, which explains why Ukrainian forces targeted the company's logistics hubs. The strikes underscored the strategic importance of Wildberries' infrastructure, with experts warning that further attacks could have significant economic and social consequences for Russia, which we actually see almost every night with Ukrainian strikes on these hubs in Russia. So that was it for this week's digest of our materials. Feel free to, at any time, to read them in full on our website, blacksky.com. My name is Dmytro Antoniuk, and I am part of Black Sky team. I am from Kyiv, Ukraine. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.